I remember the sound of my heartbeat louder than the rain outside. That night, I realized something I had spent years trying to ignore. Sometimes silence isn't peace. It's fear pretending to be comfort. I thought everything was fine, until it wasn't. It started with a question that wasn't supposed to mean anything. "Do you have a boyfriend?" I said no, casually, because that was the truth. But then someone laughed and said, "Don't tell me you're one of those girls." And right then, in that split second, the air around me changed. That was the first time I ever had to defend my identity, and I had no idea how much it would change everything that came after. Before that night, my life looked normal from the outside. I lived in a small town where everyone waved to each other, where gossip traveled faster than the morning bus. It was the kind of place where the word different always came with a warning. At school I was quiet. I blended in. Straight A's, polite smile, the kind of girl parents trusted to babysit their kids. And every time someone asked if I was dating anyone, I'd laugh and say, "No, I'm focusing on school." What I didn't say was that my stomach twisted every time I caught myself staring at a girl for too long. That I replayed moments in my head where her hand brushed mine, and it felt like my entire world tilted slightly off its axis. I told myself it was nothing. Just admiration. Just confusion. Just a phase. I thought if I ignored it, it would go away. But the truth doesn't disappear just because you bury it. It waits. Quietly. Until one day it demands to be heard. My coming out journey didn't begin with rainbows or pride flags. It began with fear. With pretending. With the exhausting act of performing a version of myself that everyone else found comfortable. I used to think that was strength. Keeping the peace. Staying quiet. Blending in. But really it was survival. And survival isn't the same thing as living. It happened at a friend's birthday party. We were all in this cramped living room, laughing too loud, the air thick with cheap perfume and vanilla cake. Someone turned on a game of truth or dare. When it got to me, they dared me to text my crush. I froze, because my crush wasn't a boy. Before I could even make up an excuse, someone grabbed my phone. They scrolled through my messages and found her name. And right there, glowing on the screen, was the last message she sent me. "I wish I could hold your hand in public." The room went silent. Then someone read it out loud, and everyone laughed. Not the nice kind of laugh, the kind that slices you open. Someone said, "Wait, are you serious? You like girls?" I felt my pulse pounding in my ears. My hands started shaking. I wanted to disappear. To melt into the floor. To laugh with them just to make it all go away. But something inside me, something small and angry and tired, wouldn't let me, and before I could stop myself, I said, "Yeah, I do." Everything stopped. The laughter, the music, even the air, it was like the world held its breath. I didn't mean to say it. I wasn't ready. But once the words left my mouth, they couldn't be unsaid. That was it. The moment I stopped being invisible. The moment my truth was out there, raw and undeniable. And for a second, I felt both terrified and free. You know that feeling when time slows down, and you can hear every heartbeat, every whisper, like the world is watching you from behind glass? That's what it felt like. One of the girls, someone I had trusted for years, looked at me like I had just confessed to a crime. She stood up and said, "I can't believe you lied to me." Her voice cracked on that word. Lied. It felt like being accused of something I hadn't done. Because I hadn't lied. I just hadn't been brave enough to tell the truth. I left the party before anyone could say more. The walk home was quiet, except for the echo of my own footsteps. Every streetlight felt like it was exposing me. Every shadow whispering the rumors that were already starting to spread. By the time I got home, my mother was waiting for me. She looked tired. Not angry, just tired. She asked, "Is it true?" I couldn't bring myself to speak, so I just nodded. And I'll never forget what she said next. She sighed. And then she said, "You could have told me sooner. I already knew. I was just waiting for you to know too. It wasn't what I expected, I thought she'd be disappointed, that she'd look at me differently. But instead, there was relief in her voice, like she had been holding her breath too. That was the twist. The person I feared losing the most was the one who loved me without needing an explanation. It wasn't perfect after that. There were awkward silences, careful conversations, a few relatives who whispered instead of speaking, but the foundation of fear I'd been living on finally began to crack. And underneath it, I found something solid: truth. Before that night, I thought being accepted meant keeping quiet. After that night, I realized acceptance doesn't mean being invisible. It means being seen, even when it makes people uncomfortable. Before, I thought fine was good enough. After, I understood that fine was just the absence of honesty. Before, I looked at the mirror and saw someone trying to be everything for everyone else. After, I saw someone scared but real. That was the night I began to understand what it meant to be part of the queer community. Not just a label or a word, but a promise to myself that I would never go back to silence again. My world didn't magically become easier. Some people stopped talking to me. Some teachers looked at me differently. Even my best friend needed space to process what she didn't understand. But I also found new friends who did. People who saw me for who I was, not for who they wanted me to be. And slowly the fear started to fade. In its place, there was something warmer. Something like peace. That's what I've learned about lesbian stories. They're not all dramatic confessions or perfect endings. They're small acts of bravery stitched together with honesty. They're about choosing yourself over comfort, truth over quiet, love over fear. Defending my identity didn't look like a speech. It looked like standing in a room full of laughter that wasn't kind, and choosing to speak anyway. And that small act, that trembling, terrified, "Yeah, I do," and became the most powerful sentence I ever said. If there's one thing I want you to take from my story, it's this. You don't owe anyone an apology for who you are. You don't need to wait until it's safe to be honest. Because sometimes safe never comes, and waiting just keeps you living in someone else's version of you. Your coming out journey doesn't have to look like mine. It doesn't have to be loud or sudden or cinematic. It just has to be yours, even if it starts as a whisper. When I look back on that version of me, the girl who was shaking in a room full of laughter, I wish I could tell her this: you are not broken. You are not strange. You are not alone. The first time you defend your identity, it might hurt. It might feel like the world is splitting open. But sometimes things have to break, so you can finally step through the cracks into something real. And when you do, when you start living honestly, the air feels different, lighter, like breathing for the first time. You'll still stumble. You'll still doubt. But you'll also find moments, tiny precious moments, where someone looks at you and sees you. That's the reward, not perfection, not universal acceptance, just peace. And if you're somewhere on your own journey, if you're watching this wondering whether it's worth it, I promise you it is. You are worth it. Every word, every truth, every small act of courage adds up. Because one day, you'll wake up and realize you no longer flinch when someone asks who you love. You'll smile and answer without fear, and that's when you'll know you've stopped surviving and started living. So if this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt unseen, unheard, or afraid to be who you are, leave a comment below. Share your story, because your voice might be the one that helps someone else find theirs. And if you want more real, honest queer stories like this, subscribe, stay connected, and let's keep building this community together. We're stronger when we share the truth. You thought it was fine, but fine isn't living, and you deserve so much more than fine.